Welcome to episode 3 of Priviso Live, your dose of insights and tips on all things information security, ICT legislation and risk. Brought to you by Priviso Consulting. This is Lynn, joined as always by my fellow podcaster, Nathan.
Hi Lynn and welcome everyone. Today we're going back into the archives. You know, Lynn, before I became involved in information security, I had been through the IT mill. I had worked in IT operations, networking, software development, database administration, architecture, software distribution, almost everything out there.
That's quite a resume, but this is a short podcast, Nathan. What's your point?
When I finally got involved in information security, it was different to everything else. The security community was more passionate about this branch of IT than anything else I had done, for many reasons.
Well, I don't want to disparage anyone, but I agree that this is an interesting discipline.
With many interesting stories, we're going to uncover some of the more interesting history, especially for those that may not have heard the stories before. And we'll begin by discussing phreaking.
What's your language, Nathan? But I'm puzzled. Phreaking what exactly?
Just phreaking with a PH, not an F. But I first need to explain a technology principle. Imagine for a moment that you are operating a telephone system. As you set up and end calls, there are many components that have to talk to one another, all along the route, so that they act in unison.
So I would imagine that these components signal each other, right?
Correct. And there are different ways to do this. But to keep it simple, I am going to talk about in-band signaling. This is when these signals are sent along the same channel as the information. On a telephone system, this would mean that the lines would carry both these signals and voices together.
But the telephone systems don't do this, do they?
No, but they used to. There may be listeners old enough to remember that you could dial a number on a landline telephone just by rapidly tapping the numbers on the handset rest.
Really? Not very secure.
Yes, but great if you were a kid in the 60s and your mother locked the phone dial.
Okay. So I suppose this leads to how this was used by a hacker?
Well, kind of. It's the story of a man named John Draper. In the 60s, he was an electronics enthusiast and a member of the early hacker community known as phone phreaks. These were individuals who explored and exploited the telephone network to make free long-distance calls using the in-band signaling.
Oh, really?
Yes. And this is where it gets interesting. He used a simple toy whistle found in boxes of Captain Crunch cereal. This whistle emitted a tone at precisely 2,600 Hz, the same frequency used by AT&T's long-distance switching system to indicate an available line.
What? You're kidding me?
Draper and his fellow phreaks could manipulate the system to make free calls by playing this tone into a phone. But that's not where he stopped. He went on to create devices known as blue boxes, which could generate the necessary tones to control the phone network. Prior to that, the phreaks had used an organ and cassette recordings of tones to make free calls. Of course, this was really problematic for the phone companies, and during the 1980s, they upgraded to out-of-band signaling. And the phreaking era was over.
Who would have thought that a toy from a cereal box could be used to hack the phone system? That's incredible.
The Captain Crunch hack highlighted the vulnerabilities in the phone system and inspired others to find vulnerabilities in other systems. It was a touchstone that energized the nascent hacking community.
So he was the first hacker?
I wouldn't say that, but he did get a lot of publicity for his efforts, enough so that he initially received a 5-year suspended sentence and ultimately 2 jail sentences in the 70s for toll fraud.
Well, you play with fire, I suppose. But you know, so much of information security development originates from people exploiting the holes they find for their own benefit.
That's sadly true, isn't it? However, he later worked with Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, developing software for Apple computers to communicate with the telephone network, and he wrote the original IBM word processor.
He has a more impressive resume than yours, Nathan. What an interesting story. Anyway, we're running out of time. That's all from Priviso Live for this week. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope you found this episode interesting. I certainly did.
If you want to hear more of the same, Don't forget to subscribe or like our channel to receive future episodes. You can find us on all major podcast channels, including Apple, Samsung, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. As always, this is sponsored by Priviso Consulting, your partner when trust matters.
Until next week, bye for now.
And as always from me, stay cyber savvy. Bye-bye.